Okay, then how come he gets to have, or she gets to have, a Mount Rushmore kind of representation and I might get nothing when I die?
Because he believed and you don't.
Oh, touche. Imagine yourself again at that beginning where we're standing in that large carriageway with the beautiful trees around us and the tombstones all over the place and a deer about 100 feet away from us walking along. You see more than that. That's all I saw.
Yeah, no, it's like seeing a lady sit on, say, the edge of her tombstone, different era clothes, so definitely not our time frame. I'd say 1858. Then there was a lady down with a pressing machine. Again, 18 to 1950.
Okay.
And then a few men, some of them sailors, some of them Quakers, some of them businessmen. So it all varies in what I see. And then there's this mist, I think I was talking about at one point.
Yes.
The mist directed me to where I was looking.
Welcome to Seeing Dead People, the slow burn storytelling podcast where our host, Nicola, challenges her psychic friend Darcy to communicate with the dead and unravel historical ghost stories, unsolved true crime mysteries, and all things paranormal. If you want to be spooked, amazed, and entertained, stick around for an astonishing, deep dive convo with the spirits on the other side. Radio Sydney presents Seeing Dead People, Episode 24, Graveyard Ghost Walk, Part 1.
Hey, Darcy. Hello tonight. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you, Nicola?
I'm great. We are Zooming tonight, Darcy, as you know. And we've had a funny experience. Normally, we don't see each other that often, and now we're seeing each other within a few days. We tried to do something different that on Seeing Dead People that ran into a bit of problems. We went to a beautiful cemetery in Victoria called Ross Bay Cemetery, the oldest one, and one of the most beautiful ones around with spectacular views of the ocean. And we had some guests. We had your daughter and my sister, and we wandered around the cemetery for a good hour and a half, I think, seeing dead people, talking about tombstones and memorials and the people that you were seeing and I wasn't. And I was recording it on a new device, big mistake, that was digital. And I thought I had it under control, but in fact, it didn't record. And as you said, Darcy, perhaps they didn't want to be recorded, but it was probably more likely that I made a mistake. So you've kindly agreed to go through it again. So we're just going to reminisce as to what really we experienced when we went to this graveyard. And I think it could be kind of an interesting show.
I think so too. And tonight we have our pets helping us.
Yes, you've got your pet cat, Shadow, and we've just had my pet, Peach, the cat, and our little dog, Spud. So they're about paying attention. So that might be kind of fun to have their involvement if they see any dead people. I don't know. Okay, well, I'm going to let our listeners know a little bit about the cemetery that we went to. It's part of the traditional territory of the Assangees and Esquimalt nations, and it stretches along Dallas Road in the Fairfield district of Victoria, British Columbia. It's about 27 acres in size, so it's a very large cemetery to my way of thinking. It's very old. Its first burial was in 1872, and since then, nearly 30,000 people have been interred there. And when I talked about that during our walk in the cemetery, you initially said something about that first burial. What did you tell me?
I asked if it had been a lady who was first buried in the cemetery.
Right.
And you said, yes, it had been. And then we also discussed the Ross, was it Ross, the lady who actually owned the land? And
yes,
she was buried there as well.
Right. Well, and we will get to, I'll mention Isabella. But what I was curious about is that you knew that the first person buried there was a woman. And I don't see how you would know that. So maybe you can expand on that.
Well, when we were standing as you were getting the mic and everything ready, and just so everyone knows, it was working when we first started the procedure, because I even saw the little red light go on.
Exactly.
And I remember standing there and just this overwhelming feeling that there was a lady who owned the property and was buried there. And so I went with the image in my head and feeling it's like goosebumps, basically, when I'm on the right track. Right is yes, left is no. So goosebumps all down the right side, which was a yes.
Oh, cool. We haven't heard that yet before, but you were able to know that Isabella wasn't the first one. She was there, but the first one buried in 1872. How did you know that woman was there?
Because that's what I was told by spirit, by everyone where you're standing around. That's exactly what I heard is there's a lady buried here before anyone else. And it wasn't the owner, but they in the same breath, they said a lady owned the property and was buried there. So that's basically how I knew.
Okay.
Direction
And
spirit.
when you say spirits, are these the same spirits that are guiding you always, or are these cemetery spirits from Ross Bay?
Both.
Both.
Yeah.
Well, how do you manage to keep track of all that stuff in your head, of all these voices or images?
I know my voices.
Oh, okay. Your spirit guides. Okay.
I know their voices and the vibration. So it was a different vibration that told me there was a lady buried first in the cemetery. And then my group turned around with their vibration and said, yes, that's true. But also a lady owned the land.
Wow. Well, while we were discussing that, I think I said to you, are you seeing anybody right now? And your response was yes. And you went on to expand a little bit. So maybe you could do that now. Imagine yourself again at that beginning where we're standing in that large carriageway with the beautiful trees around us and the tombstones all over the place and a deer about 100 feet away from us walking along. You see more than that. That's all I saw.
Yeah, no, it's like seeing a lady sit on, say, the edge of her tombstone, different era clothes, so definitely not our time frame. I'd say 1858. Then there was a lady down with a pressing machine. Again, 18 to 1950.
Okay.
And then a few men, some of them sailors, some of them Quakers, some of them businessmen. So it all varies in what I see. And then there's this mist, I think I was talking about at one point.
Yes.
The mist directed me to where I was looking.
Wow. And of course, I didn't see that mist. And it was about 7:20 in the evening, and the sun was still bright, and it was still very warm, and it didn't feel dusky yet. So I could see no mist. There wasn't any, kind of mist coming down because it was becoming evening and getting darker.
No, it was actually quite bright out.
Photo number 1 will show us. There you are, very bright. There's the two of us just from the side as we start out our adventure, our graveyard ghost hunting. So we talked about the owner of this land. It was a gal named Isabella Mainville Ross, and she purchased the land in 1853, and becoming the first woman in British Columbia to actually own land when she did that, which I think is just astonishing, exciting, but amazing that it took that long, if we can call it that, for a woman to own land, because of course there was a lot of land owned by men way before that. But the nice thing for her, she was honored in many ways. The Bay of the Water that's in front of the property in the ocean is called Ross Bay, and the cemetery itself is called Ross Bay Cemetery. So Isabella Mainville Ross was given a lot of credit, and we do talk about her, and we do have a look at her tombstone as we start walking through our graveyard. In fact, she's considered one of the spirits that is in the cemetery. And I don't know if you encountered her, but she's often encountered by people. So you might encounter her this evening when we have a look at her tombstone. The cemetery, as I say, was 1872, and it's one of the last resting places for many, many famous Canadians, British Columbians, in fact, including pioneers, obviously, premiers, artists, and we have a variety of grave markers inscribed in 10 languages, all of which gives us a sense of the many dignitaries and nationalities represented here. Very astounding looking burial place with a lot of different varieties of religions, of races, of represented countries. So we're going to now look and focus on a couple of the most famous ones, Darcy. famous BC families from the 19th century. This is considered Ross Bay Cemetery kind of a jewel in 19th century burial grounds. So we're first going to explore the Dunsmuirs and the Douglases, and then we're just going to let it go and see what happens with you. Okay, so Darcy, we're now going to just go for a little stroll and meet a couple of the major memorials. The first one we're going to run into is the Douglas Memorial, and it's about 100 yards. We had to walk about 100 yards to get it. It's quite impressive. And if we look at photo number 2, we'll see it's a very large red granite pedestal, it's called, with a cornice, which is the little kind of top. And atop that is a beautiful cross looking like a Celtic design, because it has a bit of that circle around the arms. It is surrounded by a wrought iron fence. It's quite a fancy looking, distinguished, stately burial plot. Buried here are Sir James Douglas, his wife, Lady Amelia Douglas, and other family members. And if you recall, James Douglas was famous British Columbian, head of the Hudson's Bay Company, and involved in founding Fort Victoria, which later became our city of Victoria, in the mid-1800s. He was also the governor of Vancouver Island and later the governor of BC, and he died in 1877. So as we were looking at this tombstone and we were talking, you heard a sound in your head and you said something. What sound did you hear and what word did you tell me?
The sound I heard was a ticking clock, and it was going tick, tick, and I felt like I wanted to nail it down, to keep it in one place, because the lady of the house was saying that it literally ruled her life.
Okay.
And she was, I guess, glad to have it gone, but also it was like the heartbeat.
And was this a clock, a watch?
Oh, no, it was a pocket watch. It was a pocket watch. At first, I thought maybe he'd been given a conductor's watch. It was definitely an important watch. It was part of the house.
Okay. And when we were looking at the tombstone, or the memorial, I guess, you mentioned that I was thinking and saying, somebody in this family is ghostly. There's spirits in this family. And you right away twigged to which individual was the one who was considered to be the wandering spirit.
The lady.
Right on. Amelia. Yeah, Lady Amelia. She died about a decade over than her husband. And the story goes that Lady Amelia's and James Douglas's son was 16, and they sent him off to school, as was the kind of fashion in the day, to go to boarding school. So he went all the way from Vancouver Island to England at age 16. And they gave him a gold watch and a gold chain as a commemorative to send him on his way. And this gold watch and chain was a real bone of contention for them, because they found out when the young man arrived in England that he immediately did something with the watch, and you knew right away what he'd done.
He pawned it.
Yeah. How did you know that?
Because I saw a little ticket, and I know we didn't discuss this, but I saw a little ticket that reminded me of a pawn shop ticket.
Oh, really? Yeah. Well, you didn't mention that before. You just said he pawned it. You knew that, but you didn't mention that you'd seen his ticket. Yeah. Oh, cool. Well, yes, the darn little rat did pawn this gorgeous watch and chain, which was a gift from his parents. When they found out, they were horrified, they were hurt, and they were furious at him. And in fact, his father wrote him and said, "This was an act of such utter heartlessness. I could never have believed you capable of it. I commend you to God's keeping. Poor mama is in deep grief." What did you think of that statement?
That the boy really didn't care. Okay. Not about his mother being in grief. That he probably did care about. But the fact that his father was admonishing him, he was a boy. One should expect this from a boy.
Right. And he's 16. He's pretty darn young.
Yeah.
What happens with the watch, and you twig to that, I began to describe to you the supposed storyline about Lady Amelia and her wanderings. It's actually the watch that's the focus here, and it's on a watch of theirs is on display. Obviously not the watch the young boy pawned, I don't think, is on display at the BC Royal Museum in a glass display case with other Douglas Memorial memorabilia. And something happens with this watch that they cannot explain. And when we were talking about, you said, she's telling you, I've got to nail it down. And what did you mean by that?
That it moves around.
And that's why I went, well, how do you possibly know this? It does. This is what happens to this watch. It's in a display case, and it does seem to change its location without help from human hands. And it's quite, I think, frightening and delightful for the staff of the museum who go in there probably every day thinking the watch is going to be in a different location, and it often is. So that's kind of a delightful, not threatening kind of haunting, but nonetheless, it's definitely a haunting of some sort.
It is. And you know what? As I look at the picture number 2, okay, I can actually see. Okay, I never remember. Is he James Douglas?
Yes, this is James Douglas.
Okay, he's got a little, it's not that his hair is receded, but his hairline's back a little bit of a mustache. These mutton
sideburns,
and I can see him looking like he's behind, looking around.
Really? Did you see that when we were there? Or you're just seeing that now in photograph number 2?
I'm seeing it now.
So here we are in photograph number 2, and I'm looking at the column, and in front of it is the wrought iron fence. Where actually is he hiding out?
Where the one behind it?
Yes, that column behind it. Yep, just sort of like a spindly column behind it.
No, my camera won't. Okay, let's try it. Okay, see if I can show it to you. Okay, so I'm going to turn my camera to yours so you can see it.
All right, I can. Yep.
And you know where the spear one is?
Yes.
And it's just back here. I can see him.
So he's actually behind that back column and to the right.
Yep.
Oh, wow. See, of course, I don't see anything at all. Wow. So this is the first time you're seeing James Douglas. You didn't see him before?
No.
When we were actually on the premises?
Nope. Didn't see him before, but I can see him now.
So does that puzzle you?
Never. Never. It just means sometimes I'm allowed to see them when I'm there, and other times it takes a picture for me to be able to see them.
That's amazing, because I would have thought, and I'm always so impressed with what you gain from photographs, because they are just two-dimensional, and you often gain a lot from a black and white photograph. So therefore, you don't even have the color to give you any enhancement. So I find it remarkable that you can, get this stuff from a photograph.
Well, that's the one thing I like. I like old photos for that reason, and even new photos, as you can tell, because they give me a perspective that sometimes I don't see in person.
Okay, so is it literally a picture is worth 1,000 words, in that's the case?
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, well, let's look at photo number 3, which is a shot of the two of us looking at this same memorial. So it's our two back, and then a little bit of the memorial. Do you get anything extra of that? I'm wondering, you haven't seen Amelia at all. You didn't see Amelia when we were there.
I do see an image of a lady, but I don't know if it's her.
Okay.
Or it's someone else.
And how would you ever get that answered?
Well, I'd probably have to stare at the picture for a while.
Okay. Well, let's move on. That's all right. So have a look at number 4. We're going to now move to the Dunsmuirs. But before we do, I want to say, when we were talking, and you were talking about the fact that there are numbers of spirits in the cemetery at the time we were there that you were aware of, whether they were, whether you could see them or you could hear them or feel them. And I said, well, is that not kind of overwhelming? How do you manage to keep them all at bay? What can you explain to us what you do?
I divide them into groups, okay? And then it's like I can filter them by shutting off a switch.
Right. You've talked about that light switch trick before.
Yeah. A lot of times I just block them. Like I pretend I can't hear them. Like if you've ever seen Medium Well, medium's a good one where she pretended she couldn't see people.
Yep.
Well, I'll do the same thing. I'll pretend I can't see them or hear them, and I'll just walk by. And sometimes I make the mistake of looking back. And then it's like, haha, you can't see us.
Busted.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I put a little note here because I want to talk to you about that. For example, that show at the end, as our listener's question, I'm going to change it tonight because I think that'll be cool. We'll follow that up. Okay, so now we have moved on to, thank you for that, the Dunsmuirs. Very similar tombstone monument or whatever you want to call it to the Douglases. The large pedestal. This one is in gray granite. It's not as polished. It has the cornice, and on the top of it, it has a draped urn, which I thought was a bird, and I think you thought the same till we sort of looked at it carefully and thought draped urn. And then you had an idea what you thought draped urn meant.
I thought it had something to do with being cloaked by God. It felt like there was a connection to God with the urn.
Yeah, that's a good point. I was thinking of the urn myself just as a flower pot. I didn't think of it as an interment urn, but that makes sense. You are put into an urn when you are cremated, and then this urn is cloaked by something, this cloak, which is like the body, the hands, the spirit of God.
Yeah.
Oh, that's cool. All right, I like that. Let's just say that's what it is.
Exactly what it is eternal life.
Yes, it is eternal life. You're right. So that's the representation. Well done, Darcy. Okay, well, buried here, eternally alive, are Robert Dunsmuir, his wife Joan, their son James, and his wife Laura. Now, Robert Dunsmuir, another very famous British Columbian, was an incredibly rich coal baron who lived in the 1800s and died in 1889. And he was the builder of the very famous and now we know haunted Craigdarroch Castle. And if you'll recall, Darcy, we explored Robert's family and the hauntings in episode 3. We called Cold King's Haunted Castle. And then we actually talked about his son James's chaotic life in the next episode. We titled The Haunting of Hatley Park, which was the castle that James, the son, built for himself. It was also haunted. So since we know both Craigdarroch and Hatley Park are haunted by the Dunsmuirs, a number of them, we talked about them specifically, does anybody haunt this tombstone?
The one person originally who jumped out at me was his son, James. Okay. He was the first person really to jump out, as well as it was, okay, so it was another E lady, right?
Well, we have Laura is his wife. Joan is the wife of the patriarch, Robert. Yes, and there was an Emily.
Yes.
That's whom we don't really know much about, but you were getting some kind of vibes from her.
Yeah, but now that I look at the picture, and as I look over your head, I actually see the whole family.
Okay, let's hear about that.
Okay, I see the father who he holds the symbol of an axe in his hand, which to me means someone who lumbers throughout life, making things happen. Then there's the lady with that funny bonnet on, and she just stately, deadpan face.
Okay.
Then there's the boy who is wild and rambunctious. And then I see a very young lady who, not that she's not very, how do I describe it? It's like she's very calm and serene, but I think underneath all that, there's a vibrant energy that most people ignored.
Okay.
And I'd be curious to know if Mr. Dunsmuir walked with a cane, because you know that tap a cane makes? Yeah. I can hear it.
Okay. Well, when you talk about James Dunsmuir, the son, now it's complicated because James Dunsmuir had a son also called James, nicknamed Boy. So when you're talking about the James, do you know which one you're talking about?
I'm talking about the boy, because that's how I called him. Now that you've said that, that's what I said. I see the boy.
And you knew that something had happened to this young man.
And I'm trying to go back there, and I think it was by water, wasn't it?
Yeah, he drowned on when the Lusitania ship sank in 1915. Are you seeing him in that grouping of the family, or are you seeing his father, James?
I'm seeing both of them.
Oh, okay. So you're seeing the eldest Dunsmuir, Robert.
Yeah.
We presume his wife, Joan, the one who's kind of serene and stately looking. Some young woman. Okay.
James the boy.
James the boy. Do you see James the father?
Yeah, he's there too.
Okay. And what about James's wife, who's supposed to be quite the wandering spirit herself, Laura?
I would say she's probably there. I think she likes to pop up more in the night when people are wandering where they shouldn't be.
Okay. And how do you know that?
Just this mischievous look on her face. Like, if I can get you by surprise, she's going to.
Okay. When you talk about seeing them, Darcy, literally, are they hanging in the air in front of you? Are they standing on the ground? Are they completely translucent? Are they solid? Just give us a sense, paint us a picture of what that looks like.
Sometimes it's a shadow, and I can see them in the trees as well, or
Okay.
on tombstone, like an image of them. And the other part is they can look just like we do, like solid. And other times they have this fog or this grayness around them that distinguishes them for me.
So
The ones who are solid are haven't let go of the idea that they're dead, or haven't embraced the idea that they're dead.
And so when you start to embrace the fact that you die, your solidity
You begin to
fades?
shimmy. Yeah, you begin to shimmy.
Oh, cool. Oh. And do you ever disappear?
I don't think spirit ever disappears because they're very much like electricity. So there's always an image of them somewhere for me.
Okay. Wow. So are these folks though hanging in the air, or are they standing on the ground?
The ones I just finished describing were in the air.
Cool.
They were above your head.
Okay. Wow. Well, let's have a quick look at number 5. Just out of curiosity, we have another shot of a different angle of the Dunsmuir granite obelisk tombstone. We can see a bit more of this draped urn for eternal life there. And us in the background, do you have any sense of anything else going on here?
No.
Okay, well then just whip by number 6 is again a close-up of the names. So then go to image number 7, which I think is quite a good, cool shot, because we got a shot of this obelisk, which drew you over. It's a kind of I guess a sandstone or beigey kind of colored concrete obelisk. And the shot is really cool because it has the sun in the background. And you were really drawn to this. It's actually also protected by a very ornate wrought iron fence. What drew you to this monument? We didn't know anything about it, Darcy.
It was an energy. It was like someone who was waving a hand, and then when we got there's a hand with a heart in it.
Yeah, that's right. And we can see that in image number 8, a close-up of the one side of the obelisk.
And it was very much like an energy of "don't forget me, I'm still here" type of energy. Like, I'm, to me, hard worker.
Well, we looked closely at there's 2 sculptures on the side of this obelisk. One is the open hand with the heart in it, and you had a phrase that went with that.
I said, "My heart is yours for the taking."
And you were saying he's saying that to someone in particular, right? He's not just saying it to you and me.
He was saying it to me, to God. My heart is yours for the taking. My heart belongs to you.
And this is not to some gal, this is to God.
I originally thought it might be to some gal, but as I look at it now, I feel like it's both, in recognition of someone he loved, but also to the hard work he did for the love of God.
Really? Okay. And above that, we have another little sculpture, and it's 3 chain links, some kind of, it looks like 4 letters, which are not legible. And possibly we were discussing the Masonic eye.
Yeah.
Now, I think that has something to do with the Masonic following. Yeah, I don't know the chain links, 3 chain links. I don't know. You talked about the person being a hard worker. I don't know what 3 chain links might mean.
The chain links again could link me to God because the all-seeing eye is God. Okay?
Right. Okay.
And the links could be a link to God, but it could also be a link to religion, the belief that they're not really ever dead.
Why do you think that?
Well, you have 3 cycles of life. You have birth, childhood, and then old age.
Okay.
Birth, life, death.
Right.
3 links, right?
Right. Also, we have the Holy Trinity, 3 links.
Yeah.
So I guess we could have a lot of religiosity going on in this obelisk. Okay, and have a look at the next image, number 9, which is again the same obelisk from another angle. We're seeing the very fancy, ornate fencing around it, which is really, really attractive. We're just standing, looking and talking about it. Do you get any sense of anything more from this?
Oh, look at the face. Just, it's in the grill. Like it's on the other side of the grill. It's a man's face. He's got what I call Cro-Magnon eyes.
Yeah, okay. Heavy forehead.
Yeah, heavy forehead, broad nose. Looks like he's got a mustache. It feels like a mustache. And he's not smiling. And he looks like he's wearing some sort of cap.
And you're seeing this in the grate of the
on the other side of the grate.
Okay, I'm not seeing anything but the wrought iron fence filigree design. Whatever. Do you think it's the guy whose memorial we're looking at?
Yeah, very much the guy who's buried there.
Okay, so like wave back to him, all right?
Yeah, I will.
Okay, great. So skip number 10 and 11 because they're very similar. Let's just go to number 12 now. So we continued our stroll through the cemetery. We had recently done a show, just our last one, about a gal named Agnes who was sadly butchered en route from Victoria to her home in Vic West. And that was our discussion. And while we were talking about it, her location, she owned a bakery with her husband, and the location of the bakery was down on the Market Square area in Johnson Street. And at the time you said to me, I keep hearing a name, Bessie or Bossy, something to do with an Italian family, something to do with merchants owning this area. And I thought, well, I know nothing about this stuff, Darcy. So, okay, fine. You've got some idea in your head. I don't know that has any credence at all. So as I was doing my research for this show and I was reading about Ross Bay Cemetery, I noticed a very well-known family had a really attractive and unusual monument, which we're just about to look at. And the name jumped out at me. It just stunned me. And it was Bossy. And in fact, yes, the Bossies were merchants in the Johnson Street area, just at the time you were talking about. And I wanted you to see their monument because it is very cool. So have a look at number 12 and remind yourself of what you saw when we went up to see the Bossy monument at the Ross Bay Cemetery.
Well, it's a beautiful monument. They have cameos.
Yeah, that's such a nice term because they are sculpted cameos of their, aren't they?
And they're very beautifully done. And the first thing about them that I liked was the dynamic energy off of them, of how not only were they merchants, I'm thinking that they were involved in the development of our Victoria's community. Okay. They may have been landowners on top of everything. Mm-hmm. And the lady really struck me as the prominent person, like that steel hand behind, right. Where they say the lady stands behind the throne. Right. So that's how that struck me.
Cool. Well, have a quick look at 13. 13 is a neat shot because we have this, what I would consider to be kind of a spooky aura on it. Can you see? I can see the aura. Can you?
Yes. Actually, it was the first thing that I saw. And what I really liked is the rainbow effect it had. Yeah. And the fact that it looks like an eye if you look at it.
It does. It's quite a remarkable photograph. I have to thank my sister for taking it. It has this real shimmering light coming from the sun in, as you say, exactly the shape of an eyeball. And it's exactly just overlaying on top of this neat monument. So it's really quite cool. And they do have a top urn as well, the draped urn, eternal life idea on this monument as well. So that the Bossies were a very, I think, as you say, instrumental family. And if you look at 14, we get a little bit of a closer shot of those cameos. And really, they are very fine sculpted faces on this tombstone.
They are. They're like very unique. There's something, obviously, she must have really, because I believe her husband died before her. So that would mean that she was the person who originated these designs. And I never really looked at it, but do you notice that I'm not sure those are supposed to be pretzels, but obviously they must have had some sort of merchant store or something, because it's like everything on there represents me something like, the Horn of Plenty.
Yeah, I agreed. And then the little dial, circular dial between the two heads has, I think, 2 tools crossed or 3 tools crossed, it looks to me. So obviously something to do with someone who was either in construction, a builder, something like that, somebody who made a difference to Victoria.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we just, as we were wandering, we kind of let loose on what you were feeling and what you were being drawn to. And we were drawn to a very unusual anchor. And if you look at number 15, you'll see this very large black anchor jutting right out from the tomb or the grave. And it's quite unusual. It's a Norwegian anchor. And we just had a look at it, and you were getting some sense of the kind of person that had been buried there.
Yeah, like a merchant marine, someone in the Navy. But I've since learned, I did look up anchor because I was curious about the significance. And it's a Christianity symbology of your anchor to Christ.
You're kidding.
No.
I never would have got that from
me neither. Farthest thing I would have thought, because if you look at the anchor, there's the anchor, but the still rod going through it looks like the hook, like if you were catching fish or something.
Yep. And there's a definite big chain hanging down. But it's interesting about symbology, isn't it? Because, I tend to see things literally, obviously, because not as spiritually as you do. But you look at it and you think anchor, okay, pretty obvious. The person had to do with the water, a mariner, a sea person of some sort. But then to take it to the next step and to look up the symbology of it, I like that because it's deeper. You take it to the next step of, it's not just an anchor in the water, it's an anchor to the Lord, it's an anchor to the universe, that kind of thing.
Yeah, and then the other portion of it, if the 3 links, if any of those links are broken, it means that it's their final death.
Okay, what does that mean?
There are people who believe in Christianity and in the Catholic Church that you get buried for the resurrection of Christ.
Right.
And that means that your body comes back too. But if they break a link, it means that that's where you stay.
Oh, okay. So then we were chatting about this Norwegian thing. And I was just saying to you, just for fun, because I was teasing you. So are you seeing anybody else around? Not expecting you necessarily to have a good answer. And you nailed me right away by saying, well, yes, there's a woman over there who's sitting, having a cup of tea. And you said, you even enhanced it a little bit by saying, I think it has a little bit of whiskey in it. So I said, I had to challenge you on that one, because really, I'm looking over there and trees, maybe a bit of sunshine, a lot of lawn, and a few tombstones. I don't see any woman. And you described the woman. So if you could tell me a little bit about her before we actually approached the area, we can then have the big reveal.
Okay. I would have said late 18, early into 1950 at the utmost. The lace in the front, the hair with the bun, where it rolled up.
Yeah.
Okay. And looks like she's got on a solid blue dress. There's a table there. She's got her cup. I can see her in my head. And she's having a sip.
Wow. Okay. And then you said something. You came out with a name. Now we are 100 yards from the area, I would guess, because I can't see this woman, but where you're directing your attention, 100 yards away, and you say a name that came to you. What was that name?
Okay, well, before I said the name, I remember looking down at the ground because I was looking for something.
Okay.
And then I saw the name of my daughter's maiden name, which is Miller.
That's right.
And I said, oh, look, because I remember mentioning somewhere, someone in our group has their name in the cemetery. And I said, well, it's not ours. But
Right.
as it turned out, it was my daughter, no connection probably. And then at that point, I said, because I'm still looking at the ground, I'm looking for Campbell.
Right. And so the four of us trape across, we leave the path and we trape across a few graves, sadly. We're very polite and around them if we could. And we're approaching this area and I'm looking around and I don't see anything. I see a bunch of graves, and as most of these graves are, you can't easily read the inscriptions on them. They're so old and worn. But my sister said, there it is, Campbell. And if you look at image number 16, you'll see what we're talking about. We approached the area where you say the woman was, I guess, dangling in the air, having her cup of tea. And there is a grouping of Campbell tombstones.
Yes.
Amazing. I mean, how the heck did you do that? Did your spirit say to you the name Campbell?
Yep. Plain and simple in my head. I heard the word Campbell. And the lady in particular on these tombstones would be Edith that I was seeing.
Right. And so if we move to photo number 17, we get a close-up of two of the three Campbell tombstones, which are quite nice, craggy kind of tombstones. I like them, but very clearly defined. The words are clearly defined. They're in black. They're beautifully done. And yes, there is an Edith Campbell. And you were talking about, of course, a woman. And you said there were other women, but you thought she was the one who came out the most.
Yes.
Now that's got to give you, at the moment anyway, probably except for the watch, which was, a highlight, this lady's name, because we knew nothing about her. She wasn't in my bailiwick at all. You hit the Campbell name. I think that Darcy really is one of the better ones. And if you look at 18, you get a close-up of Campbell. Edith, get any sense of her from that?
I feel like she's a very hard-working lady and knows how to be industrious, but also knows how to take the time to enjoy life.
Good for her. Okay. Then we started to wander about looking for a mausoleum and looking for what is commonly called the Blue Angel. And we came upon the Blue Angel, and it's a gorgeous life-size statue of an angel with big wings. And it's nicknamed the Blue Angel because there have been times in the past where it was vandalized and painted blue. And you can see a little bit of the hint of the blue. And it seemed to me it's kind of like the Virgin Mary blue.
Yes.
You know how that blue? We can see that in the folds of the angel's lower body area. And so it's a really spectacular, I think, one of the most spectacular tombstones or monuments there. And in image 19, we see a good long shot of it. What sense did you get of that monument, which is for the Pooley family?
Well, for me, this is a very peaceful, dedicated, religious type of family.
Uh-huh.
Maybe spiritual more than religious.
Okay.
Okay. And very much at peace with everything and everyone around there.
Okay, well, 20 and 21 are just shots again. The 21 is a shot of us looking at Pooley, the Pooley angel or the Blue Angel. Do you see anything in that shot?
No, but in 20, I feel as though... Okay, so this goes back to the source of energy, okay? The overwhelming sense of not just eternal life, but that, when you're so happy you cry?
Yes.
That's what I feel.
Are you feeling that from the statue, from the environment? What?
I think it's from the statue.
Okay. And is the statue then feeling this in representation of somebody?
It could be of the family.
Okay. Oh, cool. So it's a suitable monument for them.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, then and before we go to the next one, we were wandering, and it was an interesting time of the day, and you said, "Oh, I can hear something," and I'm not going to say to you what it is, but it was, if you can recall what you were hearing in your head.
Oh, the taps.
Yeah, exactly.
Military.
That's right. So it was exactly about the right time, because it was becoming dusky. And that's when, of course, the evening taps would be played. And you said, I can hear them. And you actually tapped your clavicle in time with the sound of the taps that you were hearing.
Yeah.
And you knew then that, of course, there is a large memorial cemetery burial area for a number of military individuals in this cemetery.
Yes. And wasn't it just after that, then we're walking, and I went, there's what I'm looking for. And it was the Ross lady.
Yeah, and there she is. Exactly. We move into number 22. We were talking about Isabella at the very beginning, and there's her tombstone, which is very interesting. It's wooden. It's a new one that's been redone by the Old Cemetery Society, which is a society that maintains this beautiful cemetery. And I'll let you, if you can, pinch it up, read it to us, because it's really a lovely sentiment. We get a sense of her, which I really like.
Okay. She came here in 1843 with her husband, Chief Trader Charles Ross, who was in charge of building Fort Victoria. After his death, she bought the land upon which you were standing for a farm. By doing so, she became the first woman to own land in what is now British Columbia.
Wow. And she died in 1885. What sense do you get of Isabella?
Accomplishment. That's the first thing. And I'm covered in goosebumps when I say it. Accomplishments and pride. Not the pride before the fall, but pride in the fact that she was able to do something that most women never really, even today, have a chance to do.
Absolutely. And it's funny you say you get goosebumps, because I was standing beside you, and I don't think it was at Isabella. I think it was that weird Masonic obelisk. You said you were getting goosebumps from that individual. And I could actually see the goosebumps. And it was really neat that you were actually, from my perspective anyway, communicating directly with something that I couldn't see or communicate.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I guess you get that a lot.
I do.
Okay. We continued to wander. We were trying to find this mausoleum. Finally stumbled upon several mausoleums, but the one we wanted to find was for Harry Helmken, famous name in Victoria. A big, proper, austere-looking mausoleum with pillars, and it must be larger than most people's sheds, if not twice the size of most people's sheds, possibly a garage. So there's a number of burial sites within, and you had a sense of that mausoleum, but you also had something to say about it in the past.
Well, I'd been told the story about it, so I don't know how accurate the story is. And that it had been, at one point, it had been used for black magic ritual. And like I said, it was a story told to me, so I do not know how accurate that story is. But I know that when we went up to it, we were standing there for a few minutes, and I said, no, I've got to step back. I'm nauseous.
Yeah, exactly. I was wondering if you were going to recall that, because I was going to say to you, we actually peered in through that iron gate entrance to look at the little plaques, and you immediately moved back and looked quite, to me, a little bit blanched from being nauseous. You said that, in fact, you were feeling nauseous, and I'm wondering if you wouldn't mind expanding to us tonight what that means to you.
It normally means I'm encountering something that's negative, some form of negative energy. And I don't believe that the Helmkens had anything to do with any kind of rituals to do with black magic. I think it's the energy that may have been left from the people that did it.
you're not catching energy from the mausoleum family itself, but from the idiots who were desecrating this area in the past as a place for playing around with black magic. Okay, well then, Darcy, that's our tour, most of our tour for Ross Bay Cemetery. And thank you for revisiting it with me and for being patient enough to do that. And when I got home, when my email popped up a message from you, and you sent me a shot that I presume you'd taken that day in the cemetery of a lovely Celtic cross. And if you look at photo number 26, you'll see the shot. Big trees, sun coming through, Celtic cross kind of in silhouette. And you said to me, "Do you see the figure?" And I thought, what are you talking about? I'm looking at this thing. And then you sent me another photograph, a little bit shorter, smaller one that perhaps was clearer. And finally, I thought, okay, well, I'm going to push the boat out and say, I think you might mean a certain area of this photograph. Although there are lots of spots where, you could say shadows might represent something. But anyway, so if we look at 27, I circled something that I thought you might be talking about.
Yeah. To me, this is very possibly a man, not a woman. I thought it was a woman at first, but when I've looked at it since, it feels like a man walking his dog. And so then I'm thinking, if he's walking his dog, that means either he's got to be buried somewhere in this cemetery close to where this image is. So now I'm going to have to go back and see if I can find a man
who had a dog.
But it was just the weirdest thing, because when I got home and I looked, and I had to look several times to see that I could actually see an image.
Well, when you first looked, if we go back to 26, there could be lots of shapes. There are lots of shapes.
Oh, there are.
But why?
But this one is, well, because there's the head, the body, and the foot.
Yeah, I can see all that. It's true. I can see that, although it has to be a trick of the light. This is what I would say, Darcy. It's a trick of the light. You say no. You say it's more than that.
There is no such thing as coincidence.
Okay, why do you think this? I would think this is a coincidence because of the shape is the coincidence. Is that it?
Yeah, that's why you would think it's a coincidence, because of the shape.
Okay, and you don't believe in coincidences in this field?
No, and I believe there's energy in everything. Okay. That when we leave the earth, or when the earth is developed, we've left some sort of image behind. Okay. An impact of sorts.
Okay. I hope so.
And so I really feel that, and I'm going to give you a really good example here in a minute, if I can find it. Haven't you ever looked at something and saw an image in it?
No, you're always asking me things, and I feel so badly, because I have to be honest with you. I'm always honest with you. No, I don't. I don't feel these things. And you were saying sometimes, don't you feel when you go through an area, you feel goosebumps, you feel cold, you feel something? I really haven't, other than, I might be scared because it's dark and I might be in a place where I possibly shouldn't be, in a dark, alley or something. But other than that, just normally, no.
Okay. Oh, here we go. Okay, it's going to take it a minute to open it.
Okay.
But I can look at things, and it's like looking at the mountains and seeing the giants.
Okay, so when you make that statement, you mean the mountain itself is, in fact, a representation of a giant.
Yes. Now, okay, I'm going to see if you can see this.
I'm not quite sure.
There.
Yeah, okay, yes, I can. It looks to me like a side of a mountain. It's a person's face, perhaps, a profile.
Yeah.
Like Rushmore.
That's a rock with the person's face in it.
Right. That looks like somebody did a Mount Rushmore there.
Okay, but it's an actual rock. It's not something someone created. This is in the rock.
Okay, but a skeptic would say to you, the winds and time and rain happen to just sculpt away that rock to look like that. And it just happens to be a pattern that we recognize as human beings as a profile.
But why can't it be a person who died in that particular spot at one time?
No reason why it couldn't be. So you're thinking like this guy hanging in our trees, walking his dog, that this could be that person's representation on Earth.
Yes.
Okay, then how come he gets to have, or she gets to have, a Mount Rushmore kind of representation and I might get nothing when I die?
Because he believed and you don't.
Oh, touche. You got it. Okay. Perfect. I like that. Thank you. Well, that was fascinating, Darcy. We've gone a little over, so I appreciate the time you spent. A real joy. Thank you.
Okay, you have a great night.
Oh, and please keep an ear out for Graveyard Ghost Walk Episode 2, available soon on Nicola Furlong Mysteries. This spooky encounter with Victoria, BC cemetery spirits is already in the can on our Seeing Dead People website at www.radiosydney.com. Thank you for listening to Seeing Dead People, where goosebumps are guaranteed. We would love to hear from you with questions for Darcy about her psychic process or suggestions for other mystifying situations you would like us to investigate. Please shoot us an email to info@radiosydney.ca with Seeing Dead People in the subject line. New episodes air on our website, radiosydney.ca, on the first Saturday of every month. Episodes repeat Saturday nights at 8 p.m. and Sunday mornings at 10 a.m., both Pacific time. All episodes are available as downloadable podcasts at our website or on our YouTube channel, Nicola Furlong Mysteries. I'm Dorian Mortis, weirdly keen on seeing dead people. This has been a presentation of Radio Sydney.